Hi friends, welcome back. Today we travel to a place so dark that the Romans used it as an excuse to destroy a city. Imagine the North African coast 3,000 years ago, where the air was thick with the sweet smell of incense. But beneath that lay something far more terrifying. In the heart of Carthage was the Tophet, a walled-off cemetery. Thousands of small urns held the charred remains of children. For centuries, it was believed they died naturally. But recent evidence points to a sinister truth. The elites of Carthage were intentionally sacrificing their own flesh and blood. It was a desperate bid to save their empire. Hit that subscribe button to join our family. And leave a comment letting me know what dark history you want to hear next. To understand why a civilization would turn to such extreme measures, we have to look at the high-stakes world of the ancient Punic Empire. Carthage was the superpower of its day, a maritime juggernaut that controlled the trade routes of the Western Mediterranean and held enough wealth to make the Romans tremble with envy. They were the descendants of the Phoenicians, a deeply religious people who believed that their success in business and war was directly tied to the favor of their gods. In a world where a sudden storm could sink an entire fleet or a plague could wipe out a city, the Carthaginians felt they were in a constant high-pressure negotiation with the divine. They weren't just praying for help, they were looking for a way to guarantee it. And in their culture, the greater the gift, the greater the reward. The origin of this ritual traces back to the very founding of the city by Queen Dido, who fled from the city of Tyre after her brother murdered her husband. The legend goes that the Phoenicians brought with them a dark tradition of foundational sacrifice, believing that to build something that lasts forever, you have to give the earth something precious in return. Ancient sources claim that when the city was first being constructed, a royal sacrifice was made to ensure the walls would never fall. Over time, this evolved from a rare emergency measure into a calculated, systematic part of their society, where the act of giving back to the gods became the primary duty of every noble family who wanted to stay at the top of the social ladder. The figures who oversaw these rituals were not monsters in their own eyes, but high priests and aristocratic fathers who believed they were doing the right thing for the community. We have the high priests of Baal Hammon, the sky god of fire and fertility, and the priestesses of Tanit, the lunar goddess who was often depicted as a faceless, triangular figure. Then there are the historical witnesses like the Greek historian Dionysius and the Roman writer Plutarch, who described the horrific scenes with a mix of disgust and fascination. These men recorded that the wealthiest families in Carthage were the ones most likely to participate, often choosing their firstborn sons to prove their absolute devotion to the state and the heavens. The one thing that held this entire ritualistic system together was the concept of the religious contract. The Carthaginians practiced a very literal form of faith where they believed the gods were essentially celestial businessmen. If you wanted a successful harvest or a victory over the Roman legions, you had to pay the price up front. This wasn't about love or mercy, it was about debt and payment. They believed that the life force of a child was the most valuable currency in existence, and by returning that life to the gods via fire, they were creating a divine obligation that the gods were forced to honor, ensuring the empire's survival through a brutal exchange of blood for power. As the wars with Rome intensified, the pressure on the Carthaginian elite reached a boiling point, leading to a strange and desperate double life within the city. While the merchants were trading silk and spices in the bright sun of the marketplace, they were secretly dreading the next religious festival, where the state might demand a sacrifice. Tensions rose as some families began to cheat the system, secretly buying children from the poor or from slave markets to swap them for their own during the rituals. When the city faced its greatest defeats, the priests claimed it was because the gods knew they were being cheated, leading to massive public purges, where the nobility had to prove their loyalty by offering up their actual biological children in front of the entire city to appease the angry deities. The lab of this ritual was the Tophet precinct itself, a specialized area located at the edge of the city, away from the living but close to the sea. Archaeologists have found that the site was meticulously managed, with layers of urns buried in chronological order over hundreds of years. The process was highly technical. The infant was first killed, then placed in a small ceramic jar and cremated at extremely high temperatures to ensure only ashes remained. The parents would then place a limestone marker or stele over the spot, often inscribed with a prayer of thanks to the gods for hearing their voice, proving that this wasn't a funeral of mourning, but a transaction of gratitude for a favor they expected to receive in return. The major turning point in our understanding of Carthage happened when researchers at Oxford University conducted a massive isotopic analysis of the bones found in the Tophet. For years, modern historians tried to save Carthage's reputation by claiming the Romans made up the sacrifice stories as war propaganda. However, the science revealed that the children buried in the Tophet were not sick or malnourished. They were healthy, well-fed infants who died at the exact same age, often just a few weeks old. This shattered the natural death theory and forced the world to realize that the ancient accounts of infant sacrifice were likely accurate, making Carthage one of the few civilizations in history to bake such a practice into the very core of their legal and religious identity. The consequences of Carthage's rituals were both immediate and existential, shaping the way the world viewed the Punic people for millennia. To the Romans, these practices were the ultimate moral justification for total destruction. They saw a civilization that sacrificed its own children as one that had lost its right to exist. Inside the city, the psychological toll was immense, creating a nobility haunted by the very gods they tried to appease. When the end finally came in 146 BC, the Romans didn't just burn the buildings, they tried to burn the memory of the Tophet itself. Yet the stones remained, serving as a permanent witness to a society that gambled its future on a brutal exchange with the heavens, only to lose everything in the end. The drama of the Carthaginian ritual wasn't just between the city and its gods, but between Carthage and the surrounding civilizations. The Greeks, who also had a rough history, looked at the Punic rituals with absolute horror. There is a famous story of the Greek tyrant Agathocles of Syracuse, who used the Carthaginian practice as a rallying cry to unite his troops, telling them they were fighting against a culture that had lost its humanity. Internally, the rivalry between the Barcid family, Hannibal's family, and the other noble houses often centered on who was being holy enough, with political opponents accusing one another of avoiding their sacrificial duties to gain favor with the priests. When Rome finally conquered Carthage in 146 BCE, they ensured the consequences were total. They didn't just burn the city, they allegedly salted the earth so nothing could grow, and they systematically destroyed almost all of Carthage's own written records. This led to a 2,000-year cover-up where the only stories we had about Carthage were written by their enemies. The Romans wanted to paint the Carthaginians as subhuman monsters to justify the total genocide of their people, and the memory of the Tophet was used as the ultimate evidence of why Carthage had to be erased from the map of the world forever. The victor writes the history, and for Carthage, that history was intended to be a funeral shroud for an entire civilization. Modern archaeology has provided the ultimate validation of this dark past, but with a twist of complexity. By excavating sites in Sardinia, Sicily, and Tunisia, researchers have found Tophets all across the Punic world, showing that this wasn't just a local Roman rumor. We now have the physical evidence of the crematoria and the thousands of inscriptions where parents explicitly state they are giving a gift to the gods. This validation has changed how we look at ancient religion, showing that some cultures operated on a moral logic that is almost entirely alien to our modern understanding of family and love. The psychological impact on the Carthaginian people must have been a form of collective trauma that actually strengthened their social bonds. To participate in such a ritual, you have to fully commit to the idea that the state and the gods are more important than your own biological instincts. This created a society of people who were intensely loyal and capable of incredible endurance, but it also likely made them cold and hardened to the suffering of others. The constant presence of the Tophet served as a reminder that life was cheap and that the survival of the city required a level of sacrifice that most humans find impossible to imagine. The cost of survival was paid in blood, creating a legacy that continues to haunt our understanding of the ancient world. The legacy of Carthage is a complex tapestry of maritime achievement and dark religious mystery. For 2,000 years, their story was told only by their enemies, making them the ultimate villains of ancient history. But today, the discovery of the Tophets and the resurgence of Punic studies are giving the Carthaginians back their own voice. The Tophet remains as a haunting reminder of the lengths a civilization will go to ensure its survival, forcing us to confront the darkest corners of the human experience. In the end, Carthage teaches us that the cost of an empire is often written in the blood of its own future. In the end, we have to ask ourselves what we are willing to sacrifice to keep our own empires alive today. Carthage was a brilliant, wealthy, and advanced society that chose to burn its own future to protect its wealth and status. They weren't just monsters. They were people caught in a system of belief that told them blood was the only way to survive. As we look at the quiet, dusty urns of the Tophet, we should remember that every civilization has its shadows. And the real tragedy of Carthage isn't just how they died, but what they were willing to do to keep living. Keep your minds open, friends, and remember that history is often written in the ashes of the things we loved most. I'll see you in the next one.